Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I'm an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The future had never looked brighter for Carter Walton and Daphne Rose Walton. After finally finding their way to each other and sealing their love in marriage, the newlyweds stepped into this new chapter of life with hearts overflowing with excitement, convinced that the happiest days of their journey were only just beginning. Their world seemed almost perfect, built on the kind of love that felt unshakable, the kind that made every dream suddenly seem within reach. More than anything, they had their eyes set on building a family together, imagining a future filled with laughter echoing through their home, tiny footsteps running through the hallways, and the beautiful chaos that comes with welcoming a child into the world. It was a dream they both carried so deeply, a future they had already begun picturing long before it had become reality. For Carter and Daphne, nothing mattered more than taking the next step together and becoming parents, believing their greatest adventure was just around the corner. But sometimes, life has a cruel way of testing happiness at the very moment it feels most secure. Behind the smiles, behind the optimism, a quiet struggle had already begun to take shape, slowly creeping into their seemingly perfect marriage without either of them fully understanding what was happening. As weeks quietly turned into months, the dream that once felt so close suddenly began slipping further away. Carter and Daphne had been trying desperately to conceive, hoping each passing day would finally bring the life-changing news they had been waiting for. Yet no matter how much hope they held on to, nothing seemed to be happening. The excitement that once filled their home gradually began giving way to unanswered questions, growing uncertainty, and the painful silence that follows repeated disappointment. The journey toward parenthood was becoming far more complicated than either of them ever imagined, and neither one was prepared for what this struggle was slowly doing to their hearts. Still, Carter refused to let fear take control of their future. Determined to protect both his wife and the fragile hope they still shared, he continued reassuring Daphne every chance he got, reminding her that for many couples, these things simply take time. He tried to keep her focused on patience, convincing her there was no reason to panic and that their moment would come eventually. On the surface, his confidence seemed comforting, a steady source of strength meant to keep them moving forward together. But underneath that optimism, something felt increasingly unsettling. The more Carter insisted there was nothing wrong, the more it began to feel like perhaps there was something deeply concerning lurking beneath the surface. Sometimes the loudest reassurance comes when someone is quietly fighting their own fear. And for those watching their story unfold, the signs were becoming impossible to ignore. What initially felt like a temporary delay was beginning to resemble something much more serious. Something neither of them wanted to confront. For Daphne, the emotional weight of the situation had already started becoming impossible to hide. Every passing month felt heavier than the last, each failed attempt slowly chipping away at the excitement she once carried so effortlessly. The joy she had imagined feeling during this chapter of marriage was being replaced by confusion and growing dread, leaving her to quietly wonder if something was terribly wrong. Deep down, she had begun suspecting what neither of them had yet spoken aloud, that their inability to conceive might not simply be a matter of patience anymore. That terrifying possibility lingered in the background of every conversation, every hopeful glance, every silent moment spent wondering why their dream remained painfully out of reach. The unanswered questions were beginning to settle into her heart like a shadow, growing darker with each passing day. And soon, it appeared that devastating answers were finally coming. The latest developments surrounding Carter and Daphne's future suggest that the couple is about to face a heartbreaking blow they never saw coming, one powerful enough to shake the very foundation of their marriage. The painful truth waiting ahead may force them into one of the most emotionally devastating moments they have faced as husband and wife. All signs now point toward a devastating infertility crisis that is finally about to surface, bringing with it a storm of heartbreak neither one is prepared to weather. The crushing reality may soon reveal that the path they had so carefully planned for their future will not unfold the way they imagined. What was once a story filled with hope and anticipation may suddenly transform into one of grief, uncertainty, and painful acceptance. For a couple that had been dreaming so vividly about becoming parents, the emotional impact could be absolutely devastating. The possibility now emerging is one that could hit Daphne harder than anyone expected. She may soon learn the heartbreaking truth that she cannot conceive naturally, a revelation powerful enough to completely alter the course of her life and marriage in an instant. If that diagnosis becomes reality, everything she had imagined for her future as a mother may begin collapsing around her. The beautiful image she carried of experiencing pregnancy herself, feeling the child grow inside her, living through every milestone of motherhood from the very beginning, could suddenly be ripped away without warning. It is not simply about having a baby. For Daphne, this was deeply personal, tied to dreams she had been nurturing in her heart for years. Losing the ability to carry a child herself would not feel like a simple obstacle. It would feel like losing a piece of the future she had already emotionally built. As devastating as that possibility would be, Carter would almost certainly refuse to let Daphne face that pain alone. Standing firmly beside his wife, he may desperately try to remind her that parenthood can still be possible in many different ways. He would likely encourage her to consider other paths forward, possibilities like surrogacy or adoption, hoping to show her that their dream of building a family does not have to end here. His love for her would remain unwavering, and he would do everything in his power to prove that having a child together matters more than how that child comes into their lives. But even the deepest love cannot instantly heal the kind of heartbreak Daphne may be facing. The painful reality remains that she had envisioned carrying this baby herself, experiencing every intimate moment of pregnancy firsthand. Letting go of that dream may prove far more difficult than simply considering alternative options. And as if the heartbreak itself were not enough, the emotional consequences threatening to follow could be even more destructive. This devastating revelation may awaken insecurities buried deep within Daphne, forcing her into a dangerous spiral of self-doubt that begins changing the way she sees herself and her marriage. In the midst of overwhelming pain, she may begin convincing herself that she has somehow failed, despite the fact that none of this would be her fault. The woman who once stood confidently beside Carter may suddenly begin seeing herself through the lens of inadequacy, believing she can no longer give her husband the future he deserves. Worse still, she may begin wondering whether Carter deserves someone else, someone capable of giving him a child naturally, the traditional way she had always imagined doing herself. It would be a heartbreaking internal battle, one where grief transforms into guilt, and love begins colliding with devastating self-perception. Of course, another possibility still remains hidden beneath the uncertainty. There is always the chance that the problem may not lie with Daphne at all, but rather with Carter himself. If the medical answers eventually reveal fertility complications on his side, the situation could take an entirely different emotional turn. Such a revelation could introduce the difficult conversation of using a sperm donor, opening yet another complicated chapter neither one had expected to face. While that possibility certainly exists, all signs seem to suggest that Daphne may ultimately become the emotional center of the infertility crisis now brewing. The storyline unfolding around this couple appears increasingly focused on her personal heartbreak, her emotional struggle, and the painful unraveling of the future she had so desperately hoped for. The storm approaching their marriage seems destined to strike directly at the heart of Daphne's deepest fears. For some time now, speculation has quietly surrounded Carter and Daphne's future, with growing whispers suggesting this exact storyline was waiting somewhere on the horizon. Fans have long sensed that their seemingly perfect relationship might soon be tested by something far more serious than ordinary newlywed struggles. Now, it appears those suspicions are finally becoming reality as this long-anticipated chapter begins unfolding this July. What once looked like a simple love story may now transform into one of emotional survival, forcing both Carter and Daphne to confront painful truths about themselves, their marriage, and the future they thought they had already planned. The excitement of newlywed bliss is slowly being replaced by uncertainty, grief, and impossible decisions neither expected to face so soon after saying their vows. Now the question hanging over their future feels heavier than ever before. Can love alone survive when life suddenly rewrites every plan you once believed in so completely? Carter and Daphne now stand on the edge of a life-changing crossroads, forced to decide whether their marriage is strong enough to withstand a devastating shift in everything they imagined for their family. Dreams are fragile things, and sometimes the pain of losing them reveals truths about relationships that happiness can never uncover. As heartbreak begins tightening its grip around their future, this couple will be pushed into one of the greatest emotional tests of their lives. The road ahead promises tears, impossible choices, and moments of painful self-discovery that could either break them apart forever or prove that their love is strong enough to survive even the cruelest twists of fate. As this powerful new chapter begins unfolding, one thing is becoming painfully clear. Carter Walton and Daphne Rose Walton are about to discover whether their marriage can survive when the future they dreamed of suddenly changes forever.